And thank you for joining us today for our digital design talks. This is the place where we invite the creme de la creme of the creative tech industry to come and share their insights, inspirations, and experiences on topics that surround us today. We have today a very special guest for our second season for Digital Design Talks. This is the very first episode, and we've invited Stu Amos, design strategist and co-founder of Agency in the Wild. So I am most excited to welcome Stu here. Hi, Stu.
Hello.
Hi. So good to have you.
Good to be here. Excited. Season 2.
Season 2. This is so incredible. I mean, of course, the pandemic is a huge breakdown in all societies, but then we've also found like all these new ways to connect with people, and DD Talks, this platform, is one of them. So we're so excited to have you here. Stu, we have 3 segments. The first segment is questions by VFS. The second segment is our rapid fire round, which you are slightly familiar with. And our third segment is perhaps the most important, which is questions from the audience. And our audience, everyone watching right now, thank you so much for being here. We love the fact that you are a part of our creative community. And we really want to create this moment and opportunity for you to connect with Stu by asking him questions in the chat. So if anytime you feel like there's any way for you to connect with Stu, ask him some difficult questions, please go ahead and share them in the chat, and then we will get to them in our third segment. Okay, Stu. So before anything, I kind of want to open the floor on your journey. So how you got into design, what led you into the design industry, the creative tech industry? Is this something you always wanted from the start?
No, definitely not. I think my path was not straightforward in the sense that I had a real vision for what I wanted to be. Both my parents were architects, so I grew up in a pretty chaotic, creative household. I saw a lot of creativity. I also saw a lot of stress because being an architect and being creative is not that easy. And they both had their own studio. So I grew up in a home where there was these huge architectural drawing boards, and I was playing around with their models and all that stuff. So by the time I left school, I kind of almost rebelled against this idea of being a creative. And I thought, what's the most stable way that I could make money? And so I actually went into investment banking.
Very stable. Lots of money.
Right?
Lots of money.
And it's funny because back then, when you left university or when they're thinking about what you wanted to study, it almost felt like there was like the stable choices. You're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant, a banker, right? And all of these students would get swept up into the milk rounds and would get, just kind of railroaded into it. And so I chose that. And my other friends went into advertising. And advertising back then was this sort of glamorous place that was very hard to get into. And I started working in banking, and I just didn't really feel like it was my tribe. I did it for a while, but the sense of there was no story, there was no soul. I don't really care about money for the sake of money. Why am I doing this? It felt very arbitrary. But what I noticed was that the people that loved it, that were passionate about it, were all in. And I was sitting on the fringes. So I knew that I wasn't going to be able to compete with them, right? There was no point in competing with them because I didn't bring the same passion to it, right? And so I didn't really have a plan, but I knew I wanted to tell stories, and I was writing and I was exploring. And then I started cultivating this persona, this writing persona. I was going to be a writer. That was my thing. And I was writing, and it was distracting me from my day job, but I didn't mind. And then right at the point where I was ready to make the leap into becoming a writer, I was offered a promotion, and I was offered a job as a trader. And it was one of those moments in life where I thought to myself, well, I could take this job, but again, I know I'm just not going to be competitive in the same way that someone who's truly hungry. But I was mulling it over, and there was a climbing wall in my local gym, and I used to go there every day, climbing up and down. And I spent so much time thinking about this decision. I was so sort of conflicted by my choice that I forgot to clip into the auto belay device. So when I got to the top of the climbing wall, I fell, broke my bones, ended up in hospital, got visited by the traders who were like, we've given your job to someone else. And I thought to myself, well, someone somewhere did not want me to take that job. And that was the catalyst, which is when I went to Vancouver, which is when I was sitting around in Vancouver going, what am I going to do now that I'm not a banker? And found VFS, went through the program. And that's really what started my journey. But I think even before VFS, I was really taken by the idea that, you know, storytelling doesn't just have to be about copy and words. It's much more like a Marshall McLuhan mashup of, you know, the medium. At that time, this was 2007, you know, we were starting to see the emergence of what digital was doing to the art of nonlinear storytelling, the art of, you know, really interactive experiences. And so I got a taste of that. I thought it was web design, but obviously now it's obviously much, much more. But it was that yearning to tell story in a nonlinear way, in an interactive way, to really think about how to break story into different experiences that could morph depending on how people engage with the story. Like that really fascinated me. And that's kind of the journey I've been on since VFS, is just to really hone the craft of interactive storytelling through digital experiences, be they videos or products or whatever.
So it's basically storytelling that brought you to design is what I'm hearing, right? Or that need to be self-expressive and share the creativity part, and of course that drive, the passion. And you saw the passion, the drive in storytelling and design, and here, I mean, look at what all you have achieved in this direction. You know, you have your own agency, it's across the world. Well, I want to get into that. That's my next question, is the agency. In fact, what a good segue. So I do know that you have a lot of experience in something that we are all doing today, is working remotely. You started working remotely before most of us. So I want you to talk about that journey. So how did you start? I believe 6 years ago, and then your agency. Yes.
Yeah. You know, people have been working remotely for a long, long time, right? I mean, you know, especially in tech where things are very object-based and it's easy to quantify your output, right? So therefore people can go away, they can do stuff remotely, and they can merge that with the cloud, and you can definitively prove that you did what you did, right? Creativity is obviously a little bit more intangible, which is why I guess, you know, it's taken a little bit longer for us to embrace it in the same way as technology. But I remember distinctly, you know, Matt Pike at Universal Everything. He, as you know, his light bulb moment, I think, was back in whatever, 2006 or something like that, where he suddenly looked at his smartphone, looked at his laptop and went, hang on a sec, like, why am I going into an office every day when I could just sit in the shed at the end of my garden and connect with anyone in the world, right? And Universal Everything doing incredible work. So it's always been in the back of my mind. The challenge obviously is the tools, and I think, you know, now we've got, obviously COVID has applied the pressure, but it's come at a time where the tools have leveled up exponentially compared to what there was. So I think it was always there in the back of my mind, but it was just figuring out, is it possible? What does it look like? And so the catalyst moment, the second catalyst moment for in terms of like forming the concept of agency in the wild, was when I was sitting with one of the guys in the studio that I was working in London, and he was working on a startup, and he basically was like, I'm going to, instead of hiring a bunch of people to work on this product idea, to create a prototype, I'm just going to pay for them to go to Thailand. I'm going to pay for their Airbnb. I'm going to pay for their flights. And in return, they're not going to charge me a day rate. We're going to work, and then we're just going to hang out on the beach and go out at night.
Wow.
I thought about that, and I went, that's agency in the wild. And I immediately registered the domain. I think it's about 6-7 years ago, and then didn't end up using the domain until I, connected with Simon and then basically formalized it. But yeah, it's just kind of been a slow dawning that why would you want to arbitrarily sit in one place when you could go anywhere with technology now and connect with it with anyone, right? And surely that's the future. It's going to happen. But now COVID makes it easier to explain that because everyone now.
I mean, you're just opening up so many interesting things right now. 6 years ago, you worked remotely. I want to know where. And then 4 years ago is when Agency in the Wild started. So I want to know the beginning of Agency Wild. Like, what was that pivotal moment that you're like, it needs to happen now? So that's actually 2 questions. The 6 years ago and your remotely. And then my third question, let's complicate this a little bit more. What are the major differences that you're seeing, especially in the last year, that, working remotely has now it become more accommodating or more just adaptable? Like, what are those? So the first question is 6 years ago, what was that work that you were doing that required you to work remotely?
So it started gradually. So when I went to VFS, I graduated digital design, DD15, and actually became a motion artist, went back to London and just couldn't really get a job. I didn't really even put myself out there, but I was kind of like, but I was really fascinated, not just about creating motion graphics. I actually got fascinated by the idea of non-linear interactive motion graphics, because smart, like the iPhone was just kind of, starting to mature a little bit in terms of the apps that were coming out there. The iPad was coming out, and just the tactile relationship that you could have with interactive storytelling was something that I really fixated on. So I started a company called the Digital Puppet Show. And London is awash with amazing animation talent. So I used my hustle. I raised some money, and it just flamed out, for one reason or the other. And I was super broke, and I was sitting in this co-working space, literally with my last pennies. And then this guy came up to me who was working there, and he's like, "Look, I'm starting an agency. Let's do this." And I had never started an agency. I had no clue, but I was like, "Sure." So I started an agency, and we got a client called HSBC, which you may have heard of.
Ooh,
right? So
not a bad client, I would say.
Not a bad client, right?
Pretty good client.
And so this agency scaled from 2 of us to 100 people in about 6 months, right?
No way.
And it got to the point where I was like, every day I will shake the hand of the new people coming in, and I couldn't even keep up. And more than anything, I had no experience. So I was walking around going, literally, I don't know what's going on, but I managed to, talk my way, through it all, and I learned. But I was really fascinated by the sort of chaos. But anyways, to your point, why was that remote? So what happened was, as we grew, we kind of outgrew the spaces that we could have, and so and being senior, I guess, because by virtue of the fact that I was one of the first people there, I started working remotely at home, and I suddenly went, "This is great. I got freedom. I'm a strategist. I'm a thinker. I can't just switch it on and off like always, and so I need that freedom to find the right vibe." And then it got to the point where I thought, well, why do I have to go into an office? Like even the small agency that I'm quite senior in, like I got annoyed some days when I had to trek. And I'm trekking across London, right? So I'm in a hot, sweaty tube sometimes for an hour and back, right?
That's a tough trek, yeah.
So it was just that yearning for more autonomy, more independence that first got me thinking. And then that agency got, swallowed, or I guess bought by IBM. And
Wow.
And they all went off to Dubai. But I stayed in London because my wife has a successful business there. And so I was kind of abandoned by my flock. I mean, I made that choice, but you know what I mean? Suddenly my tribe went off to Dubai. And I was sitting in London, and then I went to New York for a while. I had this amazing experience at BBH in New York, and then suddenly I was like in a big office, in an ad agency, but in a big office, going, again, really, like, is this what my life's going to be? Like stuck in this office, especially in New York where they work, 100 hours a day. Am I going to be stuck in this big building all day? Like, this doesn't seem right either. And that was that moment where I went, you know what, this is not the future. This is people sitting in an office staring at each other because they have to be there because it's part of the rules of the game. This is not this when you look outside and you see decentralized this, exponential that, you know, everyone wild and free, and you're sitting in an office, it's not that hard to make the leap that the future was going to be free. But of course, you know, that was what, 4 years ago, and it was still a sales pitch to go free is good, decentralized good, remote is good. It was still kind of a niche sales pitch, whereas now it's obviously necessity.
Very niche, right? Because back then, in fact, it was almost like, you know, in some cases, some conservative places would look down on decentralized platforms, right? So it was a bit of at least in my opinion, it was a bit risky.
Yeah.
To take that direction. And what really wows me is the fact that you made it work before the pandemic, right? It was a big hit. The agency was completely formed, completely in profit, in fact, growing before the pandemic. And that's where I think this is a huge learning curve for everybody who's watching right now is, you know, the wisdom that you apply, and you had fewer tools then. Because I feel like, again, just my opinion, but the last year is when the Zoom quality went up, you can say, you know, and the streaming quality went up. And we all started relying on these remote platforms that would help communicate. But what were some of the, you can say, roadblocks or hurdles before the pandemic that you may have faced while setting up agency in the wild?
Yeah, well, I guess there's some common challenges setting up any business, which is how to get your first client and things like that, right? We definitely grew from, so the sort of the catalyst that officially started Agency in the Wild was the conversation that I had on LinkedIn with Simon, my co-founder, who was also at VFS with me, and we just were talking about crypto, and then I managed to get a client through my network, and we were like, let's just do this. Literally, let's just see this. And he's in Vancouver, I was in London, the client was in Sydney, and I said to him, I was like, look, you know, I love Miro, and he's like, I love Miro too, and we're like, cool, okay. So we're gonna do this fully remote. We're gonna do all our collaborative sessions in Miro. Cool. We were using Skype.
4 years ago. This is 4 years ago, 3 years ago.
It's about, say, 3 years ago.
Okay, yeah, huge difference, right?
Huge difference.
The platform of Skype, the platform of Zoom, and I don't know how old Miro is.
Miro had been around. I've been using Miro for a long time, but it always was one of the ones because you could meet in person. So you're like, oh, this is okay. It's amazing for a remote team, but if you're not fully remote, I looked at the potential of it, but it was hard to convince clients to use it when they could just book a meeting and have a workshop in person, right? But with Simon being in Vancouver, me being in London, and our client being in Sydney, there was no choice. So we embarked on this journey, and we did this this pretty intense. I feel like I'm still recovering. It was amazing work, but it was sort of 2 weeks of high pressure brand strategy, positioning of a product, a marketing campaign rollout. And when the dust settled after that 2 weeks, and we looked back at what we achieved, especially because Simon was in Vancouver, 8-hour difference. Sydney is 12 hours. So we actually spanned the entire world. So if you think about it, we were using time zones to our advantage. So when we look back, and our client was also thinking, you guys are basically working around the clock, right? And we were just standing off in Miro going, here you go, good night. I'd go, good morning, and then so on and so forth. So essentially within 2 weeks, we actually did 6 weeks worth of work. And that's when we went, hang on a sec. If that's just the two of us, what if we could actually create an entire swarm network of talent and create a process that could do that at scale? And it was that light bulb moment that made us go, okay, we're going to go all in. And since then, and since then, the roadblocks have been, you know, how can we improve the process? You know, which additional tools do we need? how can we convince pre-COVID? How can we convince clients that actually it's more important to hire the right people than to hire an agency that might have a shiny headquarter in New York, right? Is the talent is more important than the building, because the building is often a facade for the sales people who get the gig and then they go off and they'll outsource it anyways, right? So
Absolutely.
and we had a bunch of big, because my experience was working with IBM and places like that. So I had a network who could introduce us to big clients. And yeah, you could tell that they loved it, but as soon as they went up the chain to try and formalize the SOW, you could tell that management kind of, especially we call it agency in the wild, right? I started questioning the name itself because it just felt so anarchic and wild that maybe it was great and fun in the first meeting, but then when the manager has to sign up for it, agency in the wild, what if they just run off into the wild with our money? Like, what if they don't come back, right? So I think that was one of the hurdles, is just convincing people that we weren't, just going to run off. But we persevered, worked really hard at it. And then we just got this critical mass. But COVID really has probably been the biggest catalyst to our growth. Because, everyone now has a level set and gone, oh, this is great. Like, so how do we do this? So everyone's really curious in process now. And I think that's the key, is process has always been seen as a kind of like a secondary citizen, to the final design and all that stuff. But actually, process as a product is the most powerful thing you can have, especially if it, in this day and age, allows people to connect and be more effective remote. And that's really what our secret sauce and value prop is all about, is how to bring people, clients, talent together in the most free, collaborative way to create the most impact at speed without any of the traditional bullshit you associate with agencies and layers and hierarchies and account team. Like, let's just connect talent, be free, and just work, in the spirit of, this new revolution in how we work, right?
Yeah, that's just mind-blowing. And what's opening up for me is the fact that you and your vision just clearly outlines that you were ahead of the trend, because now we see the trend with COVID and remote working and the importance of that. You guys set that up before that mega trend took place. So you guys were a little ahead of the game, I have to say.
Yeah, but I think I have to be modest in that respect. We definitely went all in remote before COVID, so I can confidently say that. I guess
you can confidently say that, and we, like, we are learning from you guys.
Yeah.
Right. All of us designers are looking at the brand sprints and the design theory that you guys have now applied, proven that it is successful, that it can work, and making it easier for all of us. So thank you for that.
Well, but I will say that I'm definitely standing on the shoulders of giants in terms of other people who went remote, like Matt Pike University. I mean, he went fully remote in 2006. So I'm a mere, fly compared to him in terms of the foresight to see the remote revolution coming. But
humble.
But certainly,
humble is what I say. Yes, absolutely. Too humble, maybe a little notch less humble for 2021, I would say. Own it. So what was opening up for me is like, why is it important? So Stu, it seems like you made a lot of effort for the wilderness to be actualized, for talent to be in their place, and then collaborate and coexist in this agency space, which is worldwide. Why is it important? Why not just have a studio space? Why not just have your designers in the same roof, under the same roof?
Yeah, no, it's a good. So this is, in fact, this is another, not a hurdle necessarily, but it's the kind of subtle thing that that isn't quite maybe front and center. So agency is not a place, okay? Like, agency is a philosophy, and actually it is a philosophy. And really what it means is it's having the independence to make your own free choices, right? Like creative freedom. Like, everyone wants creative freedom. Like, all good things are wild and free is a famous quote by Thoreau. So humans do their best work, whatever they do, when they're wild and free, right? It's a simple equation. And so the concept of agency is to give people freedom to go on wherever they want to do, go into the wild. In the wild, we are free to, really push ourselves. And I think that that concept of agency is actually a little bit of a hurdle, because the word agency is such a dirty word, actually, in many respects, because it's become synonymous with overheads, with a lot of bureaucracy, with multiple agencies doing different things, retainers, like the word agency it actually doesn't really accurately reflect. It's about free agents, right? So agency in the wild is more about agency is like what you do with it. So agency in the wild is more about what we do with this new freedom and this new creative collaboration potential that we've now got. Right? Like this moment right now, for me, is like the first generation that isn't going to be defined by their age or their demographic. It's going to be defined by what they did during COVID to reflect and level up and improve and really think about the world that they want to live in and how they want to live in it, right? Because it's, and it's hard, right? It's hard for a lot of people right now. But I think if we embrace it with the feeling that we're going to be freer, then the future that's going to come out of it is going to be more powerful if we all truly feel like we're free creative agents.
Oh, wow. And the products that we can create in that space.
Yeah.
Right. And that sort of like freedom of expression and creativity, and connection with sort of like, what is our natural form? Yeah. When are we at peace? And all these very imperative things that need to go into design.
Yeah. And it's a symbiosis as well, right? Because ultimately the old models where we weren't able to connect were actually governed by very like hierarchical structures that were top down, and you'd have some executive that made arbitrary decisions about growth targets and all that kind of stuff. And then, the model was that would just fold down, right? Mm-hmm. And so what you have then is you have a disconnection from, what the CEO wants to what the people that work there really want, what the natural resources of the planet can sustain, right? So you had all these sort of legacy issues, and that's why we are where we are, right? Whereas a decentralized future is ground up, right? And works when people are given the freedom to work on a local level to really understand what's right for the context in which they live, in the environment they live. And it's that spontaneous, organic agency that is going to build a system that's actually in tune with the resources that are available to them, because they can see when they're taking too much from the earth or from their local community, whatever it is. So that balance can only exist if we have this new notion of like freedom, independence from authority, and the ability to connect real time with each other, right? To really be much more flexible in how we approach problems, right? Rather than the old model where it's like, we all need to wake up, have breakfast, get on some form of transport, go to some office, to then all sit there looking at each other. You know what I mean? Like, it just feels so,
it's so
archaic,
boxed in, like it's right? Such a, sort of like a cookie cutter system, which might be good for producing mass products in a factory, but it is not a creative space.
Well,
at all.
No. I will say that a lot of times, and this is funny because when we were doing a lot of workshops in corporates, they're like, right, here's your Post-it, here's your colored like markers, which are usually like the permanent ones, and then you write on the whiteboard. And there's like a strip light, and then at some point someone comes in with a trolley, and then you're handed coffees, and they're like, let's be creative, right? So being creative in the wrong space is a
recipe for disaster.
Exactly. But coming together as people in a space is not bad. So being fully remote doesn't mean we don't want to embrace being together, right? Like, being together is amazing, but you have to have the freedom to come together when it's right for the project or for you, right? So again, agency, it's freedom. It's not necessarily remote first is good, being in an office is bad. It's just the context in which that's applied. And if it's always applied as a blanket rule, how can that be flexible enough to really satisfy, life? Life is full of ups and downs, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, so well said. I mean, it's so beautifully put together. I could not have chosen better words, and I 100% agree with this really important insight. Is like, hey, we need to stop and rethink how we're doing things, and use our resources, our people, to their best potential, not in the cutter structure where we require them 8 hours to sort of like sit there and show their faces and be present, or whatever that means.
Totally.
So incredible. I just love that. I'm also keeping an eye out for time, and I want to ask you our last question. So this would be the last question for the VFS team and our prepared questions. And then right after this, we're going to put you under the spotlight. It's the rapid fire round, and then our audience. So audience, we love you. Thank you for being here, and keep your questions coming. My last question is there any advice quick advice, I would say, for designers in 2021 that you could share, that you feel like there's something that they should keep in their mind, just be noteful of?
Yeah, I think the number one, well, it's a classic dilemma. It's like, do I become a specialist or do I become a generalist, right? And I would consider myself a generalist, obviously very high functioning, but I think it's sort of you kind of, I don't think either one is right or one is wrong. It depends again on the person. Some people want to spend their entire life, learning how to sharpen the samurai sword, right? And they become specialists at that. Others want to synthesize and lead and think about, problems from a systems perspective, or holistically, or cross collaborate. And I think that the answer for modern designers is to embrace as much learning as possible, given the amount of resources that are out there, right, to learn. And by doing that, and put yourself in uncomfortable positions as well, because it's those uncomfortable positions that will lead to the random moment that will allow you to find the thing or the things that you want to specialize more in, right? And the more you can do that, then the more independent you are, especially getting really proficient at the basic tools. So even if you're just like really good at Figma, or Sketch, or Adobe XD, but a tool that can allow you to communicate your idea. Might not be perfect from a UI design, but at least it's there as a functional prototype. And my co-founder Simon's favorite expression, that prototype is worth 1,000 meetings, right? If you can prototype your vision, it could be a billboard or a poster or a web design like prototype, or just something that allows you to communicate your vision in a tangible way, so not just talk, right? Then you can send that to someone else and they can go, I got you, and roll with it, right? And because we have the tools now that are totally real-time and collaborative, if you can put together something ugly, and we do this is how our entire agency works, just whatever powers you have, get something into a Figma file or into a Miro board or Adobe XD or whatever you want to do, and then send that link off, and others can grab it and play with it and send it back, right? And so it's just having the confidence to have enough skills to be able to communicate your ideas. And then if you want to specialize on a single area, obviously go for it and become like a super master. But I don't think being a generalist, I think when you're wild and free, you need like survival skills, right? You need to be that person who's like, I've run out of fire, I can eat slugs, or, like a bear's attacking me, but I know how to, you have to be able to adapt constantly. So do not just focus on being a specialist, because I hear that advice a lot. Specialize, because we're all, if you can't stand out, be world-class in this one thing, there's too much talent out there. But it's sort of like that sets the mindset that it's you against the rest of the world. Like, I'm competing. Whereas actually, you can totally just connect on a much more local level, have a great career, just have 1,000 people that love you, and you can have the best life ever, right? So it's this idea that you have to be world-class in something, I think is a fallacy. Be well-rounded, but be curious and hungry. So you're not just, doing everything at a really medium level, right? Because that is, I guess, probably the reason why jack of all trades, master of none, right? There's that stigma that you're a generalist, so you can't be good at something. So that was a bit of a ramble, but I think that's kind of
beautiful
what
advice.
I would rant at someone who asked me that question.
I love it. I love it. So like really like spend this year, spend some time focusing, improving your skills in that realm, being more versatile and being able to communicate the process and the design process and participate in those conversations and help your team members for sure.
Is there, I was going to say, sorry to interrupt. I know this was a longer answer. I will say one more thing to this, right? Is that the world is such a crazy, chaotic place that all of us get lost in all the noise, right? So I would say the one thing that you can cultivate in terms of being able to orient yourself back into a sense of like baseline is if you just focus on being good at storytelling, and by storytelling I mean strategy. I just mean like figure out why this is interesting. Forget the technology. Just like what's the concept, the controlling idea you're trying to communicate. That could be about who you are trying to sell yourself. It could be about trying to sell a product. Like what's the story that's actually real and relevant in this day and age, like right now? And then secondly is, what do I need to do in order to create a prototype of that vision, right? What is it? Is it a hardcore piece of code? Is it just a doodle? Like whatever that is, then just focus on being good at communicating your idea in that, and you might have to go learn or not. And then the third is like growth is how do you measure whether you're actually being successful? So if you want to put your CV out there and get a job, how many CVs have you put out? What did you get any responses? Did you get some? Did you fall at the first? Just have a clear vision of what you're selling, what it is that you need to put out there in order to test whether it's working or not. Like if you just focus on those three things, everything else just services those needs. Your tech, the tools and all that stuff is just a way to tell a good story, put something out there so you can test whether anyone cares about your product, service, movie, whatever, right? As fast as possible. Do not be afraid. Just go out there, get out there, put it out there, which is also a cliche, but it's so true. It's like, if you sit there for the rest of your life trying to perfect this pixel in the hope that someone cares, I mean, you could be right, but you could probably be really
It would take you a long time.
Right.
This seems way. So the three things, the three advice. Number one, set up a controlling idea for yourself. Tell your story. What is that story? The second is refine your skill set, right? Continue to refine that skill set to support the story. Is that right?
Focus on the design you need to achieve in order to put your story out there.
And prototype.
Exactly. Prototype.
I love that. I'm going to steal this. I'm trying to remember so I can steal this. And then the third is measure your growth.
Yeah.
So set a growth plan and then go back and look at it.
Yeah.
Beautiful. 2021, three things we all designers, all of us have to do is these three things. I love it. It's amazing. I'm going to ask you one last question before the rapid fire round. So, and I think this is going to just sort of like bring everything together. You have transformed your life. You have moved from London to Hornby Island, which is one of the most beautiful places in this world. You and I, we were just chatting about how you got Starlink satellite set up for yourself in Hornby Island. And these are all attributes of that digital artist working remotely that you are talking about. So can you just like talk to us about your move and your technology as, agency in the wild, living in the wilderness with creative tech surrounding you?
Yeah, no, that was a big, so Nikki, my wife, when we moved here and we came to save the family farm, she was like, are you sure you can work? Right? Because you spent all day and you're living in central London, you've got, 200 megabits per second down and whatever, 150 up, and now you're going to go to home. Can you even make it work? And I was like, sure. And she was like, well, are you going to do some research? And I thought to myself, worst case scenario, if I have to wake up, swim to the next island, get on a boat, go to a co-working space, like I'll do it, right? So
that's a lot, Stu. I'm sorry, that's a lot.
It would have been a lot. It would have been a lot. So when we got here, it was pretty hardcore. It's been a constant struggle against the power of trying to get internet here, pre-Starlink, from rigging my own little mini 4G cell tower, which was faster but really terrible. And then when the wind blows or there's too many leaves in the way, it's like. So I literally started developing PTSD, and I know my business partner did as well, from the constant fear that my internet was going to break. But then over time, you overcome all obstacles, and I managed to make do with a pretty low-level line, but it was slow, right? Having said that, though, I think we take like high-speed internet a little bit too much for granted. And so what happens is we just start consuming all this stuff, right? Whereas when you have to really just trickle down information as if it's 15 years ago, you start to value every little bit, and you start to really focus in on like, what can I do? What can I sync? What should I share? How can I make the file smaller? So there's a kind of survival trial that goes on when you're suddenly limited. And then Elon, savior of the world, just decides
brings a satellite to you,
launch
in Hornby Island,
right? And so someone mentioned it over the summer. I signed up for a beta, and then on my birthday, I get an email saying it's ready. And within 5 days, I got the satellite. It's sitting out in the field, and I'm suddenly now fully, high speed. And so I'm it is crazy that how fast that happened, because I thought it was going to be years before Hornby joined.
I think you're one of the only ones, at least, that I know of, who has Starlink and everything set up. So that's right. Pretty incredible.
We haven't won any major awards yet, but we have just awarded ourselves the first agency in the world to be running on Starlink. So nice. Admittedly, this hasn't been independently verified. So if anyone else is running an agency out there on Starlink that before us, I'd like to apologize. But given that, to your point, we're in this weird little beta, the better than nothing beta window, I feel like that claim can stand. So, it's not Everest, but maybe in future generations, people will look back and go, agency in the wild.
Beautiful. Apart from the many other things that you guys have sort of like created new ways for the whole industry to follow, this is another one of them. So the list grows. Okay, Stu, yes. Thank you very much for that. And I am going to jump into our rapid fire round just for the sake of time, because I do have like 500 other questions for you, but we're going to have to invite you again for that.
Okay, great.
So everybody who's watching right now, thank you. And this is our digital design rapid fire round. And we have 10 questions for Stu. Stu has to answer very quickly, short answers for each one of these questions, thus rapid fire. First question. If you had a choice of choosing another career apart from one in design, what would that be?
Professional surfer.
Oh my God, I thought you would say architect, but professional surfer. Amazing, wild. Okay, how do you overcome a creative block?
Swimming.
Incredible. Okay, which is very closely linked to surfing. So I'm seeing a trend here. The longest amount of hours you have worked in one sitting?
420.
No. Without sleeping?
Maybe.
Oof, insane. And I do believe that, because you've set up an incredible agency and the career path that you just shared with us. I don't know anyone else who would be able to do this without no sleep. So I see that, yes. The biggest change a client asked you for during a project cycle, during the production of the project, biggest change?
You know, I have to say, I don't know the answer to that. I've never been sideswiped by some sort of build me a pyramid or something, you know.
Yeah. After they say like build me a brand identity, then they're like make it into a pyramid.
Well, I tell you what, I can't answer this question because our process is so agile, so iterative that we never ever have misalignment with our client on any level. So I've just never been in this situation before. So
Love it. And I know that you have a link for everyone who's watching today to connect with Agency in the Wild and learn more about these design sprints and this process. So we're going to share that link with you in the end. Your fifth question, one word to describe a co-founder or a design strategist.
Stressed. No, that's a terrible word. Experimental.
Beautiful. Love it. Love it. Love it. Experimental, growing. Favorite designer or most inspiring designer these days? For me, I know it changes all the time. So. Tough one.
Designer.
So many.
I actually really love these people. Anne M. Pendleton Julian and John Seeley Brown.
Beautiful. Okay, lovely.
They wrote this book, Design Unbound, which is way too it's way too hard to understand how two people actually managed to think through all of this and write a book. Like I can't even wrap my head around it. So, but they inspire me because it's all about free agency.
Design Unbound.
Design Unbound, not for the faint-hearted.
It's something that all our designers need to check out. That's a great book. Okay, next question. What's on your bedside table?
Backgammon, from beginner to badass.
Oh, the game?
The book.
The book. Ooh, whoa, nice. All right. The last book you read or the last documentary you watched?
I watched the documentary, Werner Herzog's Happy People of the Taiga.
Oh, what's it play on?
I don't know. I think I watched it on Netflix, maybe,
Okay.
or Apple TV, or Crave, or one of the many subscription services. But it's all about the happy people of the taiga, which is, you know, the northern Russian steppes, where a warm day is like minus 32 degrees Celsius, and they are remote people living a pretty hard life, but they're happy. So what does that say?
Beautiful. Yeah, definitely want to check out this documentary as well. My list is growing. What's the worst trend right now?
The worst trend is political division.
Mm-hmm. Best trend right now?
Creative freedom.
Oh, love it, love it, love it. All right, so that's the end of our rapid fire round. And now the third most important segment is our Q&A from our audience. So everybody watching right now, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of our design conversations. And we are going to open up the Q&A. So your first question, Stu, is from Miranti Isaiah. I hope I said that right. What do you see or consider when you hire a designer to work with your agency or your agency's project? Great question, Miranti.
So I'll tell you, the process was we've been going through growth. So we've been hiring. And so first of all, when we're looking through the first round of candidates, you know, it is obviously kind of binary in the sense that it's a CV or a piece of work, right? Depending on the role that you're applying for. So if you're a designer, you know, we do want to see some beautiful design. Can't get away from that. And, you know, if you're a developer, obviously great, you know, digital experiences that I can actually interact with, and so forth, right? So there's a level of, I want to see a portfolio, or we want to see a portfolio. But there's also how you reach out to us. Clearly, you know, what are you putting in your cover letter? How do you come across beyond that? Then we go into an interview round, just to kind of, you know, whittle down the list, and then we'll have a second round. And the way we do it, we actually take the value prop canvas, which is a, you know, exercise that most of you guys will be familiar. And we ask our candidates, what are their short-term goals? What are the pains they're experiencing that are stopping them from being the best person they want to be, right? And what are their long-term goals? Like, what are the things that would make them happy? And that gives us a sense of, like, do you really align with working with us or not, right? So depending on how that goes, then the next step would be to do some form of experiment, right? So for example, with our designers, which worked really well, it would be a bit harder for some of the other types, maybe, but you could do it. We could do it. But for a designer, for example, we had 5 or 6, and what we did, we said, what's your day rate? And then we paid them their day rate or hourly rate to experiment for 5 hours, say, or 3 hours, or whatever. Actually, to be honest, they could do 1 hour, but just go wild in this Figma file. We usually give them actually a client brief or something that we're working on internal, and just go for it. And what we're looking for is, how much experimentation can you do? We're not looking for like one finished design. We're looking for, in that period of time, where did your brain go? What were you able to do? And what kind of evolutions were you able to bring to life? And it does, and so then when we look at it, we go, okay, wow, this person really thought amazingly, you know, through this problem. They went back to information architecture. They started researching, right? Other people might have gone and smashed out the most beautiful, you know, different variants of design. What we're not looking for, though, is someone who would then agonize over one perfect thing. So it's the ability to be free and be creative. Ultimately, then, is what we judge, you know, our candidates on, and then we take it from there.
Wow, it sounds pretty tough. You make it sound a little simpler, but I mean, I was trying to like imagine if I apply to agency in the wild. Tough. It's a tough place to get into, I would say.
I mean, you know, everything's tough, right? I mean, we live in a competitive world, but I think the most important thing is just willingness to be open and experiment, right? Like, that's what we're looking for.
Okay, you do have a lot of questions, so we may be going a little over time, Stu. I'm warning you now. Sorry for that. But I mean, it's just like you're so much in demand that everybody wants to ask you a question. Our next question is from Peria. Any tips on finding a good business partner?
That is a really hard one. I think that
it seems like you've been really good at collaborating with people.
Yeah, it's always come about organically. I've never gone out and gone, right, I will find myself a business partner now, you know, and put an ad out there, right? I think that would be hard. However, you know, these days, you know, I don't want to rule that out. I don't have any experience with that. All of my business partners have been, you know, have come about organically, whether it was like a best friend, whether it was someone I met in that co-working space, now with Simon. It's always tricky with a business partner. You know, there's obviously famous stories of all the, you know, Bill Gates, Paul Allen, you know, Steve and Wozniak, like they all fell out. And, you know, so I think that it's like, or find them organically, because they're really truly aligned to the passion behind the project or business that you want to start, right? Like, do they truly care? Because you're always going to go through bad times. So if you found someone who on paper ticked the boxes, but really wasn't willing to commit fully, that would be a red flag, which is why usually organic meetings happen, because you're drawn by the same energy, you're drawn by the same passion, right? So you have that connection from the start. And then in terms of one interesting thing that's come about with me and Simon, because we were friends at film school, we weren't like close friends, and we hadn't spoken to each other for years. But when we reconnected, you know, since then we've been working and formed a great relationship again. But we're really different. And actually we argue all the time. I'm a bit grumpier. He's much nicer.
I just, now that I think about it, yeah.
So we clash all the time because we want the best work. Like we want the best work. And so Simon put it nicely, and he got it from, he reads a lot. So he got it, I don't know where it's from, but it's this idea of like serving a higher purpose. The higher purpose is actually, how is this going to make people's lives better, right? So when Simon and I are arguing about a certain point, and I might be wrong, he might be wrong, and we're, who, like, which idea is going to serve the higher purpose of making someone's life better? And let's just commit to that, right? Let's not make it personal. And I think that's a really important, so whoever you choose as a business partner, always having this idea of like a higher purpose in mind to break any kind of tension between the two of you is a super important thing to keep it going.
Beautiful. And that's like that main purpose that connects the two of you, because that purpose is the same.
Yeah. And ours is literally, our purpose at Agency in the Wild is to set people free. We believe that design and technology have come along now to set everyone free. And so when we work, and by free, we mean our talent free to work wherever they want, but also our clients. We want our clients to be free from all the bureaucracy and all the kind of legacy ways in which they've worked with agencies. We want silos to be free from thinking in silos. So we are trying to re-architect the entire fabric of what it means to work. And that's genuinely our passion. And so anything that gets in the way of that is really irrelevant, whether it's my ego or his ego or this or that. It's like, there's a higher truth there. So we'll find it as long as we truly believe in it, which we do.
Love it. Next question is from our creative director at VFS, also the head of marketing, Evan. Are talented creative designers getting paid top dollar working remote, or is there an expectation that you'll get paid less for that convenience?
There should be no expectation of getting paid less.
It's the same work, right? They're generating the designs, so.
You should get paid more because you're willing to, because people who are wild and free and out there and willing to be independent are usually way better. Well, that's not a fair thing to say. But they usually are going to give you their heart and soul, right? And so it doesn't matter. And in fact, this is a really important point actually, is that technology has democratized talent. The idea that if you live in Manhattan or London or LA, that you're somehow better and need to be paid more is clearly not true when we're all looking at the same tutorials and sharing ideas, right? And in fact, a lot of times the design industries in those areas are really derivative, right? They know what the clients want. And so the freshest thinking is actually coming from the people who are willing to make, to experiment and who are bringing in different cultures and different ideas. So which is kind of going back to the idea that you should almost get paid more, is that the people who are on the fringes, who are wild and free, are now actually way more creative and doing way more interesting things than the traditional archetypes who are, kind of caught in the game of the system. So I think, but I will say as well, like obviously, if you live in a country, you've chosen to live somewhere where the cost of living is cheap, then you can be more cost effective, right? So you can actually use that to your advantage, right? So again, it's about freedom. If you want to set your price super high, do it. But if you can charge less, maybe you'll get that job, right? By giving us, better value, and you're happy, we're happy. So there's no rules anymore, right? I think that's the beauty of this whole thing. There is no rules.
I love this question. I really love this question because it is so relevant right now. And that's the question that most agencies are asking themselves, is like, how do we change our pay structure and accommodate for remote living? And all right, I do see a huge list of questions, so I'm going to move on. Mun Jeong Kwan is asking, what does agency of the future look like? What does the agency of the future look like? I love that question. Nice question. Mm-hmm.
Well, the agency of the future is not a place. The agency of the future is a network, platform of talent. And that talent combines, much like any sort of decentralized consensus network, you know, that you can think of, Ethereum, Bitcoin, or whatever. Well, more Ethereum because it's more nuanced and it would be more programmable kind of. But it's essentially the idea that that you have for want of a better, you'll have a brief essentially, right? And that brief is almost like a token, right? Like a token that holds all of the I guess the legal constraints that you need in order to protect the intellectual property, to protect the value that the team is collectively combining. And that means protection for the individuals involved as well, right? You want to feel like you can be part of a team, right? But also be protected, right? Secure and protected. So the brief essentially becomes this tradable token. And then what happens is it goes into a state where it is able to bring together a really well-rounded product team. And by well-rounded, I mean everyone from, you know, the creative director, the strategist, right down to a data scientist, the copywriter, a random SME game designer, you know, like a team that thinks holistically and not in silos. And then the brief is also tied to the growth, and the growth is tied to P&L, so that when you create a backlog, an agile backlog of tickets, every ticket is linked through the design system to a line in the P&L, which is linked to the user data coming back from the experience, or the usage data. And so as data comes into how it's performing, it sort of like, almost from an evolutionary perspective, puts pressure on all of the different elements, design systems and information architecture strategy, to guide where the next investment needs to be put into. Does the designer need to go in and work on a specific template? Does the strategist need to work on the controlling idea, right? And it's that back and forth, that continuous evolution that's tied back to this token, so that token becomes a tradable commodity on a larger marketplace, right? And so then that becomes just a huge platform. And that's the agency of the future. It's not one thing, it's a platform that connects people to produce value for clients or people who want to build something.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it sounds like it's completely user-centered design, right? It's like completely based on the response, the profit and loss sort of like responses, gauging how that user is experiencing. Right?
Yeah. It's kind of you know, that was a kind of a long, I'm trying to distill a lot of thinking into that, but in a nutshell, it is really just breaking down all the elements that make something successful and just constantly testing it across every level of scale. But in order to do that, you kind of have to have some pretty advanced algorithms to bring it down into one sort of like value, right? At the end of the day, like what's the value of that team? But the value of that team really is like this swarm of elements and people and talent coming together to just make sure it works, right? Is it generating value? Is it not taxing resources too much, right? Like, is it making people's lives better and not exploiting, you know, value down the chain, right? Like all of these things will be baked into a centralized contract that will then just be traded on this platform. And that's, you know, what the agency of the future is, in my opinion.
I will definitely trust that after seeing your success and your predictions and trends, 100%. All right, your next question. Arturo is an incredible designer studying at digital design at the moment. And he is asking, if I heard correctly, you said a non-linear motion design experience. So you talked about a non-linear motion design experience. If that's so, what do you mean by that? That's how I describe what I want to explore after school. And I would like to know if if we're thinking and we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's a funny one. So remember, so non-linear storytelling is really a fancy way of just saying it, like interactive, choose your own adventure, right? I mean, there's always this tension between the sit down with a bowl of popcorn and just get lost in the movie, right? Where there's no relationship between you and the person, the people who created a movie, for example, right? You, other than you love what they're doing, but you have no way of influencing it, right? Theater, whatever, right? Well, I guess theater can be interactive. So I see that as like, that's linear storytelling, right? Totally, you're just passive observer. And then there's interactive storytelling. Now, the spectrum has gone totally crazy from when I first got interested in it, where things like Unity and real-time rendering was it's such a, I mean, you couldn't even render stuff in After Effects, you know, for years, what they can do real time now, right? So that was the world where I first got into it. So then what my expression became, okay, how can I break down the story into just like script writing, right? Scenes, beats, sequences, acts, you know. So what is the object oriented approach to storytelling? And then how can I make those objects, how can I arrange those in a way so that the user can, you know, interact with the story? And to give you a specific example of what we did with Digital Puppet Show, we actually got a bunch of animation studios to create different versions of the animations, and they were all little loops, but they kind of stitched together into a central loop, which is, I guess, sort of how game design works, right, in terms of sprites. And then just link it to interactions on a touchscreen, which was super novel to me back then, 2011, whatever. So you could sort of swipe and just interact with the story and then record it and do something. And that's super basic. Now, fast forward, right? So now, I guess, to finish my rant, I guess for now it's like, you know, looking at, you know, Unity, Unreal, real-time rendering, where you're able to watch a movie and go, I don't want that to be a Ford Mustang, I want it to be a classic VW Beetle, and they're able to swap that out on a personalized basis. And, you know, you just have all these preferences that could somehow change the way the story unfolds. I don't know how successful that's been implemented so far. They've, you know, Netflix tried that experiment, and I even got bored of that. So I think it's like there's rules there, but if you can crack it, I think it's an interesting area to explore, because you know, the world's getting more interactive. So
the world is non-linear at the
exactly.
moment. Then it is not getting linear anytime soon.
Yeah.
So
and actually, the way in which when you talk about product-led growth, you are actually talking about non-linear storytelling, because you put your product out there and the user uses it in a certain way, right, that you didn't think. And so then you have to adapt the brand story to grow with them, right? I mean, Nike does that with their sneakers app. You know, listen to the community, then adapt. So we're all doing it. Instagram is amazing. You can put all sorts of stuff on Instagram with different, and then test and then evolve your brand. So non-linear storytelling is the future. Within motion graphics, obviously it's that tension between how much do you bake and how much is real time. You know, it's
procedural. Yeah.
And I think it's honestly, it's just, if you're a good artist, you'll find the right balance, and if not, it's really boring, or it's sort of like there's no narrative there, where it's just kind of a game where you're, you know, it's kind of a classic eternal dilemma, I guess.
Okay, moving on. You have so many questions. I'm so sorry, we're going over time now. Kate Nicole, an incredible designer at Digital Design, DD49, is asking, is there anything you regret not doing during school that could have helped you after graduating? Is there anything you recommend students currently studying right now to do while they are at school?
So I think I skipped most of the branding classes, and
don't tell Google.
I know. Well, Google has seen my report card, so he's done his research. And I did it because I wanted to focus in on motion graphics.
Motion.
I was
Yeah.
all in on that, right? So so I think I probably would have been less dismissive of some of the fundamental arts, such as brand strategy, which is really, really fundamental. And so, but I don't really have any other regrets, really. I embraced it pretty fully, and I had an amazing time. So that's probably a bit like, okay, I should have probably paid a bit more attention to brand. And in terms of focus, I think, yeah, I think it's kind of on the flip side of that. If you, and again, I'm sorry, VFS, I know you want everyone to get straight A's across the board, but my suggestion is, don't worry about getting an F in something that is not core to your passion, because unfortunately, when you go into industry, no one's going to look at your report card and go, oh, you got straight A's across the board. But because ultimately, like there's so much at VFS to try. If you try and do all of it, you know, it's hard to reach a level in this short space. You can definitely be a master at all those disciplines. In my opinion, it takes a long time, but you can do it. But in this short space of time, pick your battles, focus on your passions. And I think that's part of why it's like that, right? It's like it forces you to really focus and make sure you get a super A+ with a hardcore portfolio in that one area or two areas or three areas, rather than something that's a little bit more medium with straight A's across the board.
100%. Well said. Okay, Mariana H is asking, what's your advice in terms of networking? What do you think would work for students to stand out during the hiring process?
There is a guy so networking is everything, I have to say. It is, and networking, you know, I don't mean, you know, standing up with a badge and meeting people in some, you know, breakfast meeting. You know, it's like, it doesn't need to be cheesy. Networking simply is connecting with people who share your passion. So I think the most important thing is to really, so I was going to say, there's one of the creative directors, digital creative director, I was talking to in London at a barbecue, and he said the great thing about digital is that literally one case study, that's all it takes. One crazy case study, and you can go from total unknown to superhero in demand all around the world, right? It's like a TikTok video, you know, 1 minute you're just hanging out in your bedroom, next minute you got a YouTube show, right? And it's like that. And so do not try and go to some networking event to stand there waving, and, you know, go and find the most hardcore, passionate person that shares your thing and build something incredible. And if it is incredible, obviously promote it and do your thing and find other people, and it might take time, but that's how you build your network, because then essentially you're building the thing that you want to build. So you attract the people, right? And then you build a network around what you actually want to do, rather than trying to fill someone else's expectation of, you know, and getting really good at this one thing, which, because you think it's going to improve your network. And then suddenly you become famous for that thing, but it wasn't really the thing that you wanted to do organically, right? So, and it's really important at the beginning of your career, because I made that mistake. I went into banking, right? I just went, yeah, I'll do that. And then suddenly I'm that person, right? And it's only because I had the bravery to go, you know, saw this, and actually I fell off a climbing wall, which gave me the bravery to break free. Otherwise, I probably would have been sitting somewhere right now, you know, with a cigar.
I doubt it. I'm sorry, Stu. This is the one point I have to disagree with you. That creativity was in you, whether it was the fall or not, it would have come out. It was time.
Probably true.
I'm glad that it was just that fall and not another sort of whatever. So that's the fun thing. Okay, you have so many questions. Nikki Keller, another incredibly amazing artist and designer at Digital Design right now, DD50. What advice do you have for students that want to pursue a design career after VFS? And she has another question. What are the main sources of inspiration for design? So what are your main sources of inspiration for design?
Well, I'll plug. So as is probably clear, we're really passionate about this idea, this kind of unified design theory, right? We're merging strategy, design, and growth, right? Because we feel like that's the future of design, is really merging those in this perfect flywheel of a process that we call the brand sprint, right? So we are going, our goal is to open source our entire agency. We're already on our whole process on Miro, so we're going to keep doing that. So my suggestion is to join our brand sprint sessions, and we're going to share that link. And I'm not just plugging it for the sake of plugging it. What I'm interested in is I get inspiration from all of the talent that comes in and runs through our process to see where they take it. Because every single designer that comes in blows me away with how they're thinking about it, how they're challenging it. And so selfishly, join our brand sprint, come into some of our sessions. And I guess if taking us out of the equation, I would definitely go back to that previous answer, which is whatever you're passionate in, find out what the coolest prototype is of your vision that you can achieve in the shortest amount of time, whether that means doing a masterclass or a Skillshare or whatever, but just get something out there that's pretty cool, that really reflects your vision, and then just like see if people like it. And if no one likes it, then you have a choice. Either you got to go down the I'm starving artist route, and you might die penniless, and then someone discovers your work 100 years later and you become world famous, or you pivot and you go, oh, I'll try something else, right? But definitely get to something that's interesting for you as fast as possible and challenge yourself. Don't just do something safe, right? Because that's clearly not going to get you recognized in a world that's flooded with content.
Okay. I'm going to jump to our, I believe, second last question, and we are over time. Thank you. Christy Hugh, beautiful designer from DD50. What project are you most proud of, and the creative process in doing the project? And what was about the creative process that you enjoyed the most? So what is the project you're most proud of, and the creative process in doing that project?
So I think that, well, so the project I'm most proud of is our own process, which sounds very selfish, but the reason I say that is because we are creating really great brands now, because we're able to bring in so many amazing designers with so many different styles from so many different countries. You know, we have designers literally from, you know, Ukraine, Costa Rica, a guy who was in Amsterdam, now he's in Elba in Italy, right? We got, I mean, we have people, I don't even know where they're all at, and they all come in with these different flavors. And we're so suddenly now essentially we've created like a design swarm. So every client brief now goes through this process that's so well defined from a sprint agile based perspective. And so the reason I'm proud of that, and that definition, comes from the fact that, you know, design systems are easy to, you know, to kind of break down its components, and growth is as well, analytics, technology. But brand strategy is actually, it's a kind of like an intangible, right? And which is why branding agencies can take 100 years and charge $1 million, or some people think it's just a logo. Look, there is a brand, right? So, but we've taken that tech object-based approach, applied its brand to create at least a benchmark of a process using other people's frameworks. Like we're building it using, you know, value prop canvas, like questionnaires, the onlyness statement from Martin. So we've taken and curated this process from all the things out there. And that's now bringing people together to unleash really incredible, fresh brands that is their doing. It's like, we're not controlling, it's not me and Simon, like we are the masters, right? We're like setting this process free, right? So I think that I wouldn't pick a single project that I'm prouder than others, other than like the fact that we managed to create this process, which again is in its
the design thinking process and the brand sprints process.
Brand thinking and brand sprint is the gym. It's basically like the ultimate design gym. You might be a great designer, but have you thought about strategy? Have you thought about growth? You might be hardcore growth, but have you thought, vice versa. So this forces everyone to go through it. And that is like the ultimate like design Jedi mind training gym philosophy. That's what I'm most proud of. And
Love it. I love it. I love it. I did share a little bit of the brand sprint session coming soon, and I'll share it again towards the end. Our last question, Maria Maren. How much time do you spend learning and keeping up with the industry? And do you have any recommendations to create a successful work-life motto? Thank you very much.
Well, I live on an island with very little to do. So I spend a lot of time that probably isn't healthy or normal. And my work-life balance at the moment is definitely not any model that any of you should follow. However, I'm doing it for the greater good of the design community. And my belief is that once we can unleash this properly at scale, I can sit back and, just enjoy my free time while, the process kind of takes on a life of its own. So, but it goes back to the passion thing. If you love what you do, right, you're going to just invest as much time as you can healthily do. I definitely love this whole crazy future design process, remote first thinking. But I definitely spend too much time sitting in my chair right now. So be wary of that. And I think that's the flip side. The dark side of being passionate is that sometimes you neglect the other sides of your life. But I will say
that's true, right? That's sort of like the opportunity cost of passion.
Yeah, but I will say it is also winter here, and if you look at my Mirrorverse promo video, you will notice my tan is pretty hardcore. So talk to me in the summer, and don't tell my clients, but talk to me in the summer, and my work-life balance is slightly better.
We will connect with you in the summer and get more information on your work-life balance.
Please do.
For this session, I have wrapped up the Q&A session. So everybody who's watching, thank you so much for your questions. They were really eye-opening and enlightening for all of us, especially me. I got so much out of these questions from everybody. Stu, just incredible. Like, I don't even know what kind of thank you I have to say to you after a talk like this. It was really, really authentic, inspirational, and definitely, I feel like I have a lot more insights about how agency in the wild works, how that success has taken place, and you as a designer as well. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for putting me on such a high pedestal. I really appreciate it. I'm going to increase my fee from now on as well. And just generally become a little bit more aloof as well. But no, seriously, every time we do one of these, I love it because, I think we're all passionate about design and making the world a better place. And I think that shows, right?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, we feed off of your amazing work and your amazing energy. So please up those fees and get back to us. I am sharing this website right over here where Agency in the Wild is wanting everybody to connect. So everybody watching right now, please go ahead in this sign up sheet, connect with them. And they want to have, Agency in the Wild wants to have brand sprint sessions. So they want to talk about the brand sprint sessions and explain that to you in more detail. So you guys can sign up for this. Stu, is there any other way that people watching today can connect with you? So any other social media handles?
Oh, yeah.
Instagram,
Agency in the Wild, Behance, Agency in the Wild, LinkedIn, Agency in the Wild, Facebook, okay. If you're still on it, Agency in the Wild. It's all Agency in the Wild.
all agency in the wild, whether it's Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook or anything. Connect with Stu, and you can ask him some questions and get in touch with him, and Stu will hopefully get back to you soon. He is very busy. Just scheduling
That's true. That's true.
this talk was tough for me as well. So FYI, everybody. Everybody who's watching this talk today, thank you so much for being here. We love the fact that you are a part of our creative community where we bring people like Stu, geniuses, to come and share their insights with us. And your questions and your collaboration is what makes digital design talks very, very special. So I want to thank you, everybody who's watching right now. And Stu, one more time, thank you for being here. And we hope that everybody who's watching does come back for our next DD talk that's going to happen in a month's time from now, as well as any lots of other talks that are going on. And you can find out more information on our VFS talks on vfs.edu. All our talks are there in the carousel, so you guys can check those out. And for now, Stu, we shall let you go, but only with the hope that we will invite you again soon and you'll share some new insights with us.
I look forward to it.
All right, everybody. Bye-bye
Ciao,
for
ciao.
now.
Bye.